welcome in. It's a special episode of Talkin Solutions with the Chesh. I'm your host, William Cheshire, also known as the Chesh, as I once was in my former radio life. And I'm here with a special guest, the inaugural guest for the first episode that we have planned for the Talkin Solutions with the Chesh podcast, Aprilynne Alter. Aprilynne, how are you?
Good. I'm good. I'm so stoked to be here. You reached out to me, asking if I want to be the first guest, and I said absolutely. And that was a little bit ago, and so much has changed since then. So yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm excited to get down and dirty into the details and whatnot of what's been changing, because when we first met over on Twitter, to give a quick background, Twitter can be a great place, and we've certainly been able to take advantage of that. And when I first met you, you had 500 followers, and we started kind of chatting, and now next thing I know, you're up 4,000 plus now.
Right. Yep. It's been quite the journey.
Yes, it has. And so just for everyone to know, what we're going to be talking about today, what really is special about Aprilynne and what made me want to speak to her is that she has a startup, a new platform called Tenderfoot. You can go over at tenderfoot.io to check it out. And what it is it's a platform that helps place college students with startups for internships, which I find really, really interesting. I don't think, that startup world doesn't quite have that type of commitment level in terms of internships when it comes like the corporations. So I found that really interesting. Aprilynne, will you just mind telling us a little bit about that before we talk about your background?
Yeah, of course. As you said, it's called Tenderfoot. You can find us at tenderfoot.io. And at our core, we are connecting startups with students, particularly with internships. And it's odd. I was looking a lot for a type of solution like that. You have platforms geared towards startups like AngelList. You have platforms geared towards internships like Handshake. But I guess this is our way of mixing them together, because there are so many incredible, honestly life-changing opportunities at startups that students can have that they're just not having access to yet.
I agree completely. And part of that and what makes me interested in you is your background from an educational standpoint. I feel like that maybe you wouldn't be the one that people might expect to kind of venture into this world. So tell us a little bit about, where you grew up, how you grew up, and, how your life took you through college.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty loaded question. There's a lot that I could get into here. I'll say, let's go back to second grade. From the point I was in second grade, which is about, that's maybe 7 years old, I already knew that I wanted to get into an Ivy League university, which blows my mind now just thinking about it. I don't know how I even knew that those types of universities existed at that point, but it was always a goal of mine. And I think I was super stressed, all throughout school, even starting that young, doing everything I can to be able to get into a prestigious university like that. And I'm not exactly sure why it mattered so much to me. I think that the overall goal was I want to be successful. In order to be successful, I need to go to the best university ever. And I think starting from that young, I thought that I go to a great university, I can get a great full-time job after that, and then be able to have a family and be able to not be homeless. And that was my thought process, right? And so yeah, I ended up going to Cornell University. And a particularly interesting study there, I had my bachelor's in science in hotel administration, which is kind of like business, but with a hospitality focus. I think the original goal there was to become a general manager of some luxury resort somewhere. It seemed like a very kind of sexy occupation. And after working at a hotel for a bit, realized that was not for me. Hotel operations was not for me at all. And then at that point, a lot of my peers were starting to, move into big finance, right? Your investment banking, other types of finance. And it started early. There's a general move away from hospitality ops, even within the hotel school, and into big finance. So that's kind of where it started, my sophomore year. I'll skip ahead, but basically Citigroup, which is where I'm working now, they have this early ID program. So starting my second year of school, I was able to get into the early ID program, which then fed into the internship the next year, which then fed into the full-time role, which is where I am now.
Very cool. It's also very interesting. One thing that kind of stood out to me that you talked about was first kind of, okay, it sounds sexy to be the GM of a resort. And yeah, it certainly does. It does. That doesn't sound like a bad gig at all. But it kind of sounded like you mentioned that it was something that you were kind of supposed to do and things along that line. So I'm wondering where that kind of changed, and growing up, especially, you know, in high school when you were looking at colleges, universities, you know, were you given the opportunity to kind of look at other options, or was it always, hey, you got to get into a top line school and then from there you're going to be successful? Otherwise, you know, things are a little too up in the air.
Yeah, I think for me it was always I have to get into a top tier school. When I was applying to colleges, they were all top tier schools. It's a little bit different from my brother, who's younger than me, because I think after seeing my education, my parents were able to adjust and their own expectations, as well as, you know, what they set upon my brother, and saying, you know, it's okay if you don't go to a top tier school, you're still going to have an excellent education. But, you know, I'm the first child, right? For my family, and I say especially with in the Asian culture, I'm half Chinese, and my mom's from China. She grew up, you know, dirt poor. She had nothing, and, you know, when the time that she was growing up, at any point, everything could be taken away from you. Your job could be taken away from you. Your family could be taken away from you. You had nothing. The only one thing you could hold on to that no one could ever take away from you was your education. No one could ever take away a degree that you had already earned. So I think that was part of kind of the environment growing up and placing such a large emphasis on, you know, a top tier education.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So that's why maybe at 7 years old, when most people were thinking about sports, or, you know, for me, maybe Dragon Ball Z, you know, that's where the education kind of was instilled in from the kind of the family values, then you'd say.
Right. Definitely. I mean, my dad too, he's white, but I think education was still a huge part of his upbringing as well. You know, he went through so many different degrees, you know, it was huge for him.
Interesting. And I'm definitely, you know, as you know, the podcast called Talkin Solutions, so we're definitely going to get down to your solution here, but part of that is understanding where you come from and why you created the solution that you did. So I'm curious then, you know, after you graduated, you know, you went to Cornell and everything, and after that kind of happened, when was it that you kind of realized, and what was it that kind of opened your eyes that, wait a minute, I could still do something really cool and successful, even if it has nothing to do with my prestigious degree?
Yeah, I would take it back to my sophomore year, second year, right? I knew, because banks recruit so early, I knew that my junior year, so my third year, I would have an internship at Citi before I knew what I was going to do my sophomore summer. And so I went to a career fair, which is very rare for me. I don't like career fairs. I never have. It's just, it's really hot. Everyone's sweating. People are wearing suits that are way too big for them. You know, it's very loud. I didn't like being there, but I was determined to get an internship, and so I decided to go. And I talked to two people. One of the booths, completely bare table, like no table skirt, no swag, just a bare table, a computer, like a laptop, and a person. And that was it. And they had no lines. I'm like, this is it. I'll go over here. This is great. And she was actually worked for a Series A startup based in Silicon Valley. And I had always heard of entrepreneurship. I thought, you know, that's for people who are not me. You know, I didn't think I would fit that type of persona, but I was interested, and I needed a place to go, and I thought, yeah, I'll apply. And I got the role, and I had an internship at a Series A startup. It's called Belong, and that internship changed the course of my life. I actually ended up working there for about a year. I worked remotely throughout the school year, came back in the winter over my winter break to work more in person, worked more remotely afterwards. I completely fell in love with it. And the people that I was exposed to there, I got pretty close with our CEO. His name's Ali Resnick. And just learning his background was incredible. And that was kind of when I learned that you don't need to have, you know, you don't need to graduate from an Ivy League university in order to do something amazing, and most importantly, add value. And that was a huge lesson that stuck with me from Ali when we were talking. I was young. I'm still young, but I was, you know, questioning what to do with my life. And his response to me was, whatever you do, no matter what you do, make sure you add value to the world. And that really just resonated with me.
I love that. Yeah, value creation, adding value to people's lives. And, that from a business level, obviously that's a little bit more straightforward. But I mean, that can even go down to your personal relationships, adding value to your family, to your friends, whether that's just a listening ear. So I think that's fantastic. The big thing that we're talking about, too, is what I think is a bit of a problem that we have in American society today specifically. Is that we have these kids that go to the top of the line universities, and that's fantastic. It's very difficult academically to do that and everything like that. But the one thing that's kind of laid out straightforward, kind of like you mentioned, is, okay, I'll go into finance. I'll go into high-end business administration. I'll become a lawyer. I'll become a doctor. And I was reading, and when it comes to lawyers, for example, there are a huge amount of lawyers today, much higher supply than we have demand for in some cases. And so what really interests me about your platform and your journey specifically is you were one of those students, and you went through that process, and now you have this entrepreneurship mindset. And the thing that rang the bell for me is value creation. And I think we need a lot more of that to create positive, impactful value on society today. So tell us a little bit now, focusing on Tenderfoot and what type of value that looks to provide to people. I'm sure a little bit of the value it provided you with your startup opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, at its core, I fully believe that more students need the opportunity to intern at startups. I'd say it's more important to have internship opportunities because, as you mentioned, often we're put on career trajectories and there's one clear answer. And it's very difficult to convince someone who's never had a taste of entrepreneurship to, hey, once you're done with college, start your own company. And they think, what? You're crazy, right? Because they've never experienced that before. And so, having an internship experience where they can see what this world is like, test it out for themselves, see if it interests them, see if it's something that they enjoy, but most importantly, interact with the people, because the people at the startup are going to be the type of people who want to add value to the world. And you could meet the person that changes your life or the group of people that changes your life at these internship opportunities, which can carry with you, like it did for me, throughout the rest of my life. And so that's why, I'm creating Tenderfoot, because I tell students all the time about my experience, and my recommendation to them is during your college career, make sure you intern at a startup at least one of your summers. And I get them really psyched and jazzed up to do it. And then they come back to me and say, wait, how do I find one? And that's a great question, right? I got lucky. The startup that I interned at, they only recruited at 2 schools. That was Cornell and Stanford. And so if you didn't go to Cornell or Stanford, you wouldn't have been able to have that opportunity. And many startups, even in internship job postings like Handshake, for instance, they get overshadowed at career fairs and on the job boards by the cities of the world, because they're just so small, right? And they're not as flashy. And so really giving startups a platform to broadcast their opportunities that students can apply to, I think that's going to be life-changing.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So how's it been going for you? You've mentioned that you've had a lot of students kind of ask you about it. How's the process been in terms of kind of creating that hype for the platform? Because I know it's currently in development and things of that nature, but I know you got a waiting list going on. So has there been some good feedback so far to what you've been developing?
Yes, of course. I've been, flabbergasted by the response that this idea has had. I wasn't expecting it. When I first came up with the idea for Tenderfoot, it was something that I pitched to my now co-founder as a side project. Like, hey, I want to do this side project. You're a developer. I need some coding support. I won't take very much of your time. I'll do everything else. Please help me. And he said, okay. And then when I started, airing the idea out to the world via Twitter, the response was huge. There were so many students who wanted internships at startups. So many. And there were also a lot of startups who wanted student interns and who didn't really know where to go to get those besides in your basic job postings, which aren't as optimal. And so, I had this wait list going, like over 200 students, over 75 startups. And yeah, that's been going.
Yeah, and that's amazing right there, I think, in terms of that feedback that you're getting from Twitter. I definitely want to touch on Twitter and your impact there, because you've certainly been doing a lot of good things on the Twitter platform since I've met you. But kind of going back to the adding the value in the experiment, and, I think an issue that we have is exactly the solution that you're providing is we don't have that exposure for everybody. When you grow up and you have an identification of what degree you want, you're kind of like, okay, you have to take these specific steps. Otherwise, you're going to fail and you're not going to make it. But there's so much out there that you want to try and expose. Maybe being in a startup isn't for you. Maybe it is being a doctor and providing value that way, or providing value in the financial world. That's great. But I think the issue that we're having, that you're solving, is that now you're creating a platform for kids who don't really know. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was 18, 19, 20, I had a really good idea of what I wanted to do. I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I got my, dream job. 2 years later, I quit. So maybe that wasn't what I really wanted to do. So I'm curious then to kind of go forward with that problem. When you were at Cornell specifically, and you touched on this briefly about your exposure on the startup world and stuff, but were your classmates around you, like, and your friends at that time, did they know much about the startup world, or was it, or entrepreneurship, or adding value creation, or was that was just a non-starter?
No one. And Cornell does have an entrepreneurship program, but I wasn't exposed to it, right? I had my major that I had to fulfill. I had a minor that I had to fulfill, right? I had a couple of different extracurriculars. I didn't really have the time nor interest to get involved with the entrepreneurship program. Honestly, I thought the people there were just like super type A go-getters, and that I would just kind of be scared of them, right? I didn't want to expose myself to that. I thought it'd be a little bit too intense. But no, all of my peers really were going into like consulting or real estate or finance, at least within my major. And that was really all that I had exposure to.
Yeah. And, obviously there's certainly value there as well. But I think what makes, America and other countries like that is our ability to innovate and create solutions for problems that we have, whether that's, through climate change, whether that's through economic practices, whatever that might be. So I definitely think, like you've been talking about, having those students the opportunity to kind of check out startups would be fantastic. So I'd be curious now, since, you've established a lot of relationships via Twitter, and you're kind of knee deep in the startup world now, talking to a lot of founders. You mentioned that, there are a lot of type A go-getters and you're a little intimidated. What type of response and what type of characteristics have you seen from kind of the entrepreneurship, the startup community?
Yeah.
In your brief time
Yeah.
there?
Oh man. Well, I'll tell you, I liked school. I was good at it. I didn't have a lot of friends in school. I had like one really close friend growing up, and she went to a different school. And the people around me in my school, I wasn't really a big fan of. I loved school because of the teachers and because of what I was learning. But I never really found my tribe, ever. I felt like I was always just on a different wavelength, just my values didn't align with theirs. And, in elementary school, I was like, oh, it'll get better in middle school. And middle school, oh, it'll get better in high school. And high school, oh, it'll get better in college. And I loved my college experience. But I would honestly say that now that I'm graduated, now that I'm interacting with everyone that I found on Twitter, I am like the happiest and most excited about life than I have ever been. And the people that I've connected with on Twitter, these are my people. Like, I found my tribe. As cheesy as it sounds, I have. These people are not, super type A, very aggressive, make money or die type of people that I thought a lot of entrepreneurs would be. A lot of people are people who, they have full-time jobs and they're indie hacking on the side. Or maybe they quit their full-time jobs in order to pursue something that they're passionate about. I say, passion and grit and drive is something that has united all of us. And they're really genuine, authentic people. Obviously, not everyone you come across on Twitter is going to have that level of, being genuine and authentic. But I guess I'm very grateful in the circle that I've surrounded myself with, and that they absolutely are.
Beautiful. Fantastic. Yeah, here with Aprilynne Alter, financial analyst over at Citigroup, but also maybe leaving in the future. We'll see where the entrepreneurship takes you in the coming years, as she's the founder of Tenderfoot.io as well. If you're just kind of tuning in, certainly a platform that's going to connect students with startups as well. And based on that, the journey that you've finding your tribe kind of via the Twitter things as well, have you been able to find people that have kind of mentored or helped you or kind of given you advice kind of about your journey or people that you just really kind of, established strong relationships with?
Oh man, of course. So I guess I'll preface this by, the reason for needing mentorship. I'm thinking about quitting my job. I'm actually pretty dead set on quitting my job in the next month and taking the next year to see how much I can accomplish, how much value I can add working for myself. And this was not an easy decision to make, right? I started toying with it, but it's hard. It's hard when you've been living, I guess, by the textbook of what you should do your entire life and trying to break free from that. There's all that fear of, am I screwing up my life? Am I doing something wrong? Am I doing something that I'm going to regret? And so a little while ago, someone on Twitter, he sent me a DM saying that he came across my account, he loved the content that I was putting out, and gave me some resources that he think I might enjoy. One of them was a specific episode of the Indie Hackers podcast. And on my flight recently, I listened to it. And I almost started crying during that episode because so much of the guest, Lynn Tai, her journey, just completely resonated with me. I saw so much of myself in her. And she kind of gave me that courage to start thinking about maybe it's best for me to quit this cushy finance job in favor of doing something else. And when I got home, I DM'd her. I didn't know her. I had never spoken with her before, but I DM'd her on Twitter and kind of told her my story and that I'd listened to her episode and that resonated with me. And she actually got back to me and we talked for a little bit. And she sent me a list of resources that helped her when she was going through that decision herself, certain articles to read or commencement speeches or, a bunch of different things. And I was reading through them and I thought, gosh, this is amazing. And I mean, additionally to that, I reached out to some other people on Twitter, kind of bouncing back the idea of quitting and seeing what resonated with them. I sent out a tweet, saying that I hear all the time about, entrepreneurs who quit their full-time jobs and have wildly successful companies now. And I was wondering, is there anyone who has regretted their decision? And I had a lot of responses on that, which led to more conversations that I had to really give more clarity into my decision. And none of that would have happened. None of that would have happened without Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter is, it's social media, I think, and I was a believer of this for a long time. In fact, I still am to a degree. Social media can be a really toxic place. It really can. However, what I found since I started my own personal entrepreneur journey as well, has been it's as good as what you make it. And I think we agree with that, where if you follow the right people and you surround yourself with the right people and you interact, it's a really amazing community. And I wanted you to kind of talk a little bit about that, because you've been someone that also offers incredible value via Twitter, whether that's how to grow your account, whether that's how to do your cover photo or a banner image on your Twitter profile as well. So talk a little bit about how you've kind of immersed yourself into the Twitter world and you really head dive down into creating value on that platform.
Yeah, I'll say I joined Twitter in December after I graduated, and I didn't really start using Twitter actively until March, which is when I first had the idea for Tenderfoot. And the very first thing that kind of got me going was I did what any person I think would do if they're joining Twitter for the first time. I followed a whole bunch of really big accounts that Twitter recommended for me. So like Harvard Business Review and like Entrepreneur and, all of these huge accounts, right? And, followed topics like startups, right? And it wasn't really providing me much value. I was like, wow, there's just, it was very one way. It was very big account broadcasting something to all of their many followers, but not much dialogue going on there. And then I think I got a recommended tweet from the startup topic from the founder of Copy.ai. And he in his tweet, he brought up building in public, which I had never heard about before. And then I started looking into the build in public or building in public or BIP hashtags. And I found so many people who were starting companies of their own and, building in public. And I thought, well, it's time for me to, I guess, grow my Twitter account any way that I could. And the first thing that I did, because I didn't know what value it could provide, was learning in public. And so, it's naturally the first thing you want to do when you join Twitter is, you have to put up a profile picture and a banner image and write a bio. And I didn't know how to do that. So I learned how to do it and things to avoid and things that we should do. And I wrote a thread about that. And a lot of people loved it. I got a lot of likes, I got a lot of retweets. And I guess from there, I started realizing that the way to grow on Twitter, one of the ways to grow on Twitter is to provide value, right? People don't want to follow you if you're only asking for things or if you're being really negative, right? People want to follow you because they feel like they get value from following you. And so ever since then, everything that I've tried to produce in terms of content for my Twitter account has been, how can I provide some sort of value to my followers every single day?
That's amazing. That's amazing. And, right now, tell us a little bit about your community. I think if I'm not wrong, you got over 4,000 followers now. Is that right?
Yeah, I have almost 4,500 currently. And it's been insane, the growth. I mean, I started, back in March with a little over 100. And so now it's mid-June. And I guess do the math of how many followers per month that's been. And growth has just been, I guess, it's been speeding up in terms of how many more people I can attract to my profile. But that's not really, I guess I'll start with ultimately how it started, right? Because no one really likes to hear about where you are right now. They want to hear, hey, if I'm at the point where I have just over 100, right, what can I do to get to that point? And something that really worked for me is look for top accounts in your niche, right? So in my cases, it would be people like founders, right? Or indie hackers in that space. Look for popular accounts. Look for accounts with like over 2,000 followers. But don't try to interact with them because they're likely pretty busy. And especially, and they might not, they get a lot of spam. So they might not respond if they see that you only have a little over 100 followers. Instead, engage in their replies and look for other people who are also engaging their reply section, especially people who have less than 700 followers. And then go to their account and see if you like their tweets, see if you vibe with them. If you do follow them, start engaging with them. And if they engage back, send them a DM, have a conversation, and then repeat. And it's a very manual process. It takes a lot of work. I'll say that growing on anything, Twitter included, is not easy. But you do that and you start to build a foundation, right? Something that I heard a lot about on Twitter when I was first starting are people like, oh, I'm so grateful for this supportive community that I found on Twitter. And I was all alone and I thought, how? Did you know all of these people before on Twitter? Like, how did you find this supportive, I'm all alone, no one cares about me, I don't know anybody. But if you start to do that, you start forming genuine, authentic, and those are the key words here, genuine and authentic relationships with people who you follow and people who follow you. And those people actually care about what you have to say because you do have that genuine, authentic relationship. So then when you tweet something of value, they're much more likely to engage with it or maybe retweet it. Then all of their followers can see it too. And then that just starts compounding, right? It starts building. But the key here is to start with a foundation of people who actually care about you. And the only way that you can do that is by putting in the hard work and really, doing a lot of outreach yourself to find people who you think you would vibe with.
I love that though, because that's a lot of value in a solution that you're offering to people. Like me, I've struggled on Twitter. Granted, admittingly, especially the last month, I've been very inactive. But I have found as well, because I followed some of those tweets that you pointed out to, and I followed those steps. And you're 100% right to the point where you are interacting with people that also want to be interacted with, and it's a positive, and you hit the nail on the head. It's authentic, it's real. And especially during, this last year, 2020 with COVID, it was very hard to create those types of connections. It's getting more difficult in general because of the digital world, and, we're naturally social creatures. So I think establishing that base and getting that support and that positivity is fantastic. So the value that you're giving there is really, really good. A question I would ask is as you've grown, especially at the rate you've grown at a very fast pace, do you find it more and more challenging? Because I'm imagining you get a lot of more DMs and stuff now. Do you find that kind of challenging to keep up at times with everyone?
Absolutely. It's hard. And I'm not going to lie, there have been times where I didn't want to open Twitter that day. I just didn't want to do it. I forced myself to do it most of the times. I think I missed maybe 2 days because that's the way that the Twitter algorithm works. If you spend too much time away from the platform, they'll stop showing your tweets in people's timelines, which is not very good for growth. But yeah, it's gotten hard. And I think that at the point where I'm at, I have to be careful with my time and my boundaries because, when I was just starting out, I had a lot of time to give that I could give to a lot of people whenever they asked for it. I'm at the point now where I don't have that capacity. So something that I've tried to do, is have common answers pre-written to, common questions that I get so I can just, pop that over to them. But it's been, in terms of the people that I follow too, the people I interact with on a daily basis, one, I'm proud to say I do reply to every single reply that I receive. It's been much harder to scale that because I get a lot of replies, but I still believe that, this is a social media. It's called social for a reason. There should be a two-way engagement there, not those big accounts that just broadcast and, never discuss. And then in terms of the people that I follow, I've actually cut back on the number of people that I follow. And I feel like when a lot of people see a low number of people that someone follows, but a high number of followers, they think wow, this person's super shallow, or they don't follow, lots of people. And the reason why is that when you scroll through your timeline, right, certain tweets show up and you get shown tweets from people who you commonly interact with. And if I'm following 3,000 people and there's no way that I'm going to be able to see the tweets of all 3,000 people. And if we're talking about genuine, authentic relationships that happen here, that's something that needs to be, nurtured all the time, consistently. And so if I follow 3,000 people, I'm going to have, very, shallow relationships with 3,000 people, as opposed to if I follow 600 people, I'm going to have much deeper, richer relationships with those 600 people. So I think being a little bit more picky about the content that I expose myself to, and the people that I follow and can reliably engage with, and not overloading myself there, as well as replying to everyone in my reply section because they deserve to be replied to and because it's social media, and trying to get to all of the DMs. The only DMs that I don't get to are the ones who just say hi and nothing else.
Yeah, hard to go off that.
Yeah. I mean, there are just some things there that some negative experiences that have happened when interacting with tweets like that. So I've learned my lesson. So if you want to ever DM me, introduce yourself and give me a reason to interact.
Awesome. One of the things that you really emphasized there was authentic relationships and nurturing and providing value. And then you mentioned some accounts that don't do that. Obviously Twitter is what you make it, right? I mean, Twitter is just a platform, and how you use it is going to be how your experience is. I'm curious to what you think the overall, maybe not percentage because that's a tough word, but where the overall level of people that are doing what you're doing and focusing a lot on that nurture and focusing more on that authenticity, because you have a lot of people. Well, your answer basically said, I don't really care what my follower count is. I just care that the people that follow me are getting value, and the people that I'm interacting with are authentic, real relationships. So I'm curious to see what you think in terms of the overall scope of Twitter, where that line of thinking is at, or do you think it's still the majority of people are still more concerned about followers versus value, and how you might be able to promote more people to be more interested in value?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different groups of people on Twitter, I'd say, in terms of like your average Twitter user. One of them is people who just come onto Twitter to consume, right? They don't want to tweet at all, right? They just want to consume. Those people don't care about followers at all because their primary purpose there is to consume. And then I guess another group of people are people who use Twitter and they care more about their followers. I'm not exactly sure like where the line is, but there definitely are people who care about their followers, and these are most likely people who are creating content, right? You also have some people who just kind of retweet a lot of things. I'd say they probably care a little bit less about their followers because they aren't, originally creating anything themselves. But when it comes to people who do create content, any sort of content, that's when they start to really care about followers because they want people to see what they made. They want people to see what they wrote, which completely makes sense, right? You don't want to create things and write things only to have nobody hear them. But there definitely is a line, right, between like I want people to see what I have to say versus I want to provide value to people and I'm here to provide value to others. And I also have things to say. I'd say that it's very few people, I think, have realized how much value you need to provide to your followers in order to keep them around, right? Followers are not sticky, right? They can unfollow you as soon as they followed you, just as easily. In order to keep them around, they need a reason to. And that means consistent value creation. And not a lot of people have realized this yet. And I'll draw another, one statistic that's related. It's not exactly the same, but I like to measure success on Twitter not by follower count, but by engagement rate. Because that's how you know that people like what you have to say or care about what you have to say or it's reaching them. Follower count doesn't matter. You see accounts all the time, like 100,000 followers, and each of their tweets get like 5 likes, right? That's not what you want at all. What's the point of having all those followers if they don't care about what you have to say? The average engagement rate on Twitter is 0.03%. That's tiny. And for those of you who don't know what engagement rate is, it's the number of impressions. So the number of people your tweet has reached over the number of engagements. So that's your likes, retweets, replies, saves, I think. There are a couple of different types of engagements. And so the average is 0.03%. I'd say a good engagement rate to shoot for is 3%. So just think about that in your head, right? What the average is versus what is a good rate to have. And that's kind of, that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it, the engagement rate, because it represents your targeted followers as well, or the people following you, like you said, caring about what you say. Having targeting followers is far more important than having 100,000 and then having a tweet that gets 5 likes, because then you're like, what is going on? This count's got, what? That doesn't make sense. Yeah. So I want to talk about Tenderfoot a little bit too before I let you go to retrace back to that. But before we get onto that topic, I'd like you to kind of provide some advice for people that are trying to grow on Twitter, trying to provide value, but maybe are, I don't know if shy is the right word, but hesitant to post in public, because that is a little bit of an intimidating factor for some people, is that, you're putting everything out in the world to see. And, especially with what, the media and everybody tells you, the world can be a nasty place. So it can be hard to kind of put yourself out there. So what types of things, mentally would you advise people on to kind of overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the first thing when it comes to confidence in tweeting, one is know that it's okay to be obvious, right? Something that's very obvious to you was once not obvious. You learned that thing for the first time at some point, which means that if one of the people that your tweet reaches, just one of them, is also at that point, but they haven't realized it yet, your tweet is providing value. So I'd say that's something that people are usually afraid of. Is like, I don't have anything original to say. And say that's number 2. Nothing is original. Literally nothing is original. If you see something and you think that's original, it's probably just because you don't know the actual original source of inspiration for it. Nothing is original. So keep that in mind for all of your favorite accounts that you follow. It's all inspired by something. And so when you think, I don't have anything to say, I don't have anything original, look for inspiration elsewhere, right? Because while there are no original messages, there are original messengers. And you as a person, you are original. So as long as you put your own spin on that, you can take that somewhere. I would also say that you don't need to be an expert in a topic in order to tweet about it, right? I started tweeting about Twitter, having just joined Twitter, because at that point I was learning in public, and that's something that I would advise all of you starting out to do, is pick something to learn about and then tweet about your learnings, and people will really like that. You don't have to be an expert. It's actually probably better if you're not an expert, because experts usually forget about a lot of things that people don't know about the topic, versus if you're just starting out, you know what people don't know because you didn't know it, an hour ago. So there's that. And also, again, form your tribe. Start finding people you vibe with very early. Those people will support you and protect you if they see that people are coming to start to troll you. I had a couple of trolls, not very many. I'll say I'm very lucky in that case, but I did have a couple of people who said some not so nice things. And immediately I had a lot of people jump to my support, even when I was, 300, 400 followers, right? Much less than what I have now. But because those 300, 400 people were people who cared about me, and not just random people who, I followed for followed. Not a good strategy. Do not recommend that. And just know that you're out there. It's okay if at first you're broadcasting things that no one's listening to. They'll get there. Just stay consistent, find your people, and keep tweeting.
Love it. Fantastic advice there, Aprilynne. And give a shout out real quick of what your Twitter handle is so they can get all these tips on a regular basis from you.
Yeah. At Aprilynne A, and Aprilynne is APRILYNNE.
Beautiful. We'll certainly be tagging that as well on social media so you can make sure that you can give her a follow and get all those great tips and learn how to provide value yourself. Very important, I think, again. Creating value for people is one of the quintessential aspects in life that leads to a quality life, especially as you reach those older years. Aprilynne, I want to go back, though, to Tenderfoot as well, because I definitely am excited about that. You're doing two of these things where you're creating solutions and providing value. With Tenderfoot as well, I know it's kind of in the development process. Tell us a little bit about what you know about the timeline, how the work is kind of coming along, and when you might expect some first iterations potentially in the future.
Right, so it's been going along slowly because myself and my co-founder both have a full-time job. However, I was actually having a conversation with someone that I met on Twitter, who was also a founder, and I was talking to him about Tenderfoot. And, I was like, oh, I have this big waiting list of students, and I have this big waiting list of startups, and I just have to wait until, we have the platform up and running in order to make these matches. And he asked, why? He said, you have all these people. Why not just start manually matching them? And I thought, that's a good question. And so from there, I sent out an email to all the waiting list, basically letting the students know that if they were still interested to fill out a form, and the startups know that if they still want an intern to fill out a form. And from that, I made my very first intern match, which was very exciting. It was for a gaming startup, actually. He was looking for a community management intern. And I was able to make a match, and that felt so good. I mean, I charged $20 for it. It was nothing. The only reason I charged anything for it was just to test out are startups willing to pay for this type of thing. From going from 0 to 20 is much more difficult than from going 20 to 40 and so on and so forth. Pricing is not something that I'm worried about right now, nor is really monetization yet, because we gotta solve the problem first. And so many people focus too much on monetization and they lose sight of the problem that they're actually trying to solve. But we made a match. It was very manual, and on our way to making another match. And things will pick up. So I will quit my job in a month. So starting July 18th, I'm going to be able to go full-time on all of these activities I say that I'm doing, including Tenderfoot and Twitter. I'm probably going to start a video, like a vlog on YouTube or something, about my journey from quitting a cushy finance job to like, what the heck do I do next, right? And how that progresses, and see where that takes me. So at that point, I'm going to start working much more heavily on Tenderfoot. Also, we're having an intern. My brother is coming in as an intern. He needed an internship, and we were able to provide one for him. So he's going to be starting 2 weeks from now. And he's a programmer. So, he studies computer science. So he'll be able to help my co-founder kind of release things much more quickly in order to get things up and running, which is pretty exciting. And then my co-founder is considering quitting his job in September once the lease on his apartment ends. So at that point, we'll be, the two of us working full-time on Tenderfoot. And I'm so excited to see where it goes.
Well, first and foremost, congratulations. The first match. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
I love the little family helping as well. Get the brother involved, get him in the internship. That leads me to a question, a little bit about what you mentioned earlier, about your family in terms of the values of education and studying. So I'm curious, what are their thoughts now? Because you went through it and now, here you are kind of creating things. So I'm curious to kind of see what their thought is and kind of how that transition has gone.
So I guess the best way to answer this is when I told them that I wanted to quit my job, right? Because that job, very stable, paying a lot of money, great for your resume, right? It's like every parent's dream, every typical parent's dream to send their kids to work at an institution like that, because they think, yes, like we're successful parents, they're going to not starve. And so when I told them that I wanted to quit and spend a year doing things myself, they were a little shocked at first. I'll admit, they were concerned. But then I was able to communicate with them as to why. And one of the things is that, I realized that I do not want, like, a future in corporate finance is just not for me. And I told them I have so many skills. Like, I'm a strong writer. I've become really great at marketing. I can design. I can talk to people. I love communicating with people. And all of these things are not skills that I can exercise in my finance job. Yes, I'm good with numbers, but that's just a tiny portion of my skill set. And so I'm actually being underutilized by staying at this job. So I told them that. Obviously, parents want, their kids to grow. And if they feel like they're in a position where their growth is stifled, that, helps support the decision to come out of it. I also told them, again, I don't want a future in corporate finance. So I'm wasting time staying here. And life is just too short to do something that you don't love. It just is. And I was able to get them on board, and now they're super supportive of me taking this time to see how far it can go. And my mom is really rooting for me. She's on a complete 180 of like, get a stable finance job and stay there for 50 years and then retire, right? It's to, she's like researching ways that I can maybe expand my presence as well. So, complete flip flop there. And I think for anyone who might be struggling, and I know it's hard, right? Family is really tough. Even your friends, right? The circle that you surround yourself with. If you want to switch gears, or I guess, shift off of that highway of everyone going in the same direction, the way that you're supposed to go, and your friends and your family aren't supportive of it, it can be that much harder to step off. So much harder. And so for anyone who's like at that point, I'd say stick with it and try to convince them that it's worth it. And there are a lot of speeches that you can send them or articles that you can send them. If you're concerned, if you're at this point yourself, DM me and I can send you a list of resources that, might help you and or your parents, family, and friends. And also know that even if they aren't supportive, a lot of times they'll come around. It's ultimately up to you to take the plunge and to follow something that you actually love.
Yeah, absolutely. Support system it's essential. It's crucial to long-term success. So I'm very happy to hear that, you had that, and very happy to hear the resources you're willing to provide for people looking to kind of get those parents, on board, or maybe the cousins or the aunts or the uncles or whoever it may be, the friends. So that's really cool. Tell us a little bit about how the Tenderfoot platform is going to work. I mean, obviously you did it manually, but from an automation standpoint, when the hope, obviously, understand with product and MVPs and iteration, things are subject to change. But what's the idea for how people are going to be able to use it from both a startup standpoint and in an intern standpoint?
So there are actually like 3 different models that we have right now where we could go with this. I would say we're still at a stage where we're at, customer discovery. And that's something that I'm really excited to do once I quit my job, is to talk to so many founders and understand, what they want out of a platform like this. So that's coming later. But the 3 that we have in mind right now, the first one is more like your basic job board, where also I'd say in none of these instances, students pay anything. Students have access to this absolutely for free. So in one potential model, it's just a job board, right, where startups can post their positions and students can apply, potentially with premium features that startups can, potentially pay to use, such as, we can have Tenderfoot verified students that we've pre-vetted in advance, so that they have access to those and be able to see those to help cut down their matching time, their interviewing time. Another potential model is where startups just come to us and say, we want this type of intern for this long, and we could pay this much for them, and give us more information. And then we go out and we find a match. And there's a number of ways that we can help automate this process and looking for the matchmaking to make it a lot easier on us. And so we charge the startups for that. And then the third model we have is saying that in order to be on the platform, we charge startups, which I'm not really sure which one of these are going to work. My guess is towards the first one, or maybe the second one, probably not the third one. But what we end up doing might be completely different. But ultimately the goal is going to be the same, right? Of we have startups who want interns, and we have students who want internships, and we're going to make some matches. And there are a couple of, side, products that we can do as well. For instance, a lot of startups don't know exactly how to manage an intern, which yields opportunities to create, playbooks based off of corporate, more structured corporate internships in which students learn a lot, right? And help startups, guide them in creating a more structured program for their student, or even creating a playbook for the student to say, this is how you manage, that you self-manage your internship so that you get the absolute best you can out of this experience. So there are a couple of different things that we could do here.
Love it. It'll probably end up being the third option, because that's the option you don't think will work.
Of course.
Yeah. No, but that sounds great. In sometime in 2022, is that the estimate product launch?
Yeah. So the idea is that we'd launch in spring 2022, which is just in time for the rush of summer internships.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect timing right there. That's when everybody, stops having fun at school and goes, oh no, I got to prepare for the summer.
Right.
There we go. So that'll be perfect. Aprilynne, one of the last questions I want to ask you as well about Tenderfoot and going forward and everything is we're talking a lot about values and solutions. Long term, what's your dream for Tenderfoot in terms of the value that it's going to provide to people? What is it that you hope it does to inspire kids to give out an opportunity to try out startups and give them the option of knowing, hey, is being a banker right for me, or lawyer, or is trying a startup right for me, and just giving them the options?
Yeah, well, long term, master plan is more value creation in the world. It seems ambitious, but this is the answer, right? Value creation comes from people who know or come to realize that they're here to create value. And a lot of times when you're kind of stuck in, again, that highway that everyone's going down, you don't come to that realization, right? You get lured away by what you're supposed to do, or by, this is making me a lot of money, right? I was listening to this speech the other day, and said that there are 2 types of people in the world, right? One who provides value to the world and then learns how to monetize it later. those are called, entrepreneurs. And then there's other type of people who are making money and then who maybe add value later, who's not adding a lot of value. And those people are called thieves. And so you have to determine for yourself, are you going to add value to the world, or are you going to be a thief? And that's a decision that you can make. And I think that having a taste of what entrepreneurship is, through an internship, a very safe environment where you're not risking a lot to be there, you can just reap the rewards, will help a lot of people avoid being thieves.
Absolutely. I love it. And, providing value, not even just from a business standpoint, but, you can still, just because you want to be working a job, do your 9 to 5, you can provide a bunch of value to your family and friends, and value creation is everything. I think that's fantastic going forward. Aprilynne, is there anything you want to add in particular about the platform or about what you're doing on Twitter?
Yeah, I'd say that, if you're interested in any sort of case, or if you're interested about the resources that I provided earlier, reach out to me on Twitter. If you're interested on getting onto the platform itself, reach out to me on Twitter. If you're someone who's very opinionated about this, or reach out to me on Twitter. If you're someone who, is looking for an intern, or has had an intern before, or is thinking about getting an intern, reach out to me on Twitter. I'm very approachable. I would just say more than the word hi, and I promise I will get back to you.
Love it. Fantastic. One more time, the Twitter handle for everybody.
At Aprilynne A.
At Aprilynne A. And then you can also go to tenderfoot.io and the landing and get a little more information there, correct?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Aprilynne Alter, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us about your solution today. I'm a huge fan of what you're doing, your life transition and your upbringing to what you're doing now. I find it fascinating. I've told you this before. Yeah, I think you know what I might say about that book that's laying around that you got. Andrew Yang, got to read that. Smart people should build things. I'm telling you, it's exactly what you're trying to do. I think you would resonate that very heavy. So I need to be on record of telling you to do that.
Perfect. I'll get right on it. I'll get on it.
All right, Aprilynne, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks so much, Will. Thanks for having me.
That's Aprilynne Alter. She is the founder of Tenderfoot.io. She also is a wonderful person to follow on Twitter. She provides nothing but valuable tips and growth strategies to help yourself grow on Twitter as well. Again, her platform is going to help startups get interns at the college level and give college students an opportunity to kind of have another option out there that, hey, you don't need to go to school, study broadcast journalism, and go be a broadcaster like I did and how I thought. There are other things you can go out and try to do. As Aprilynne tried, she's, not managing a business on a resort right now. She may not be in finance for much longer. So there's lots of great options there, and that's what Aprilynne does. And definitely stay tuned to her as well, because I'm excited for your YouTube channel going forward to document that journey. So once again, listening to Talkin Solutions with the Chesh podcast, the inaugural episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate having an opportunity to speak with Aprilynne. Hope you learned a lot from her as well as this first episode with the guest on the Talkin Solutions with the Chesh podcast. Looking forward to producing more. And remember, you can follow us on social media. And we're also going to provide a platform for Aprilynne in the future, a featured article on what Tenderfoot is doing, and also how you can get involved with her on Twitter as well. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, you're listening to Talkin Solutions with the Chesh.